Hey guys, welcome back to MobVlog. Adam Flowers here, and today, unbelievable, we have the retired FBI agent who debriefed Ken Eto, Tokyo Joe the Jap, when he rolled and became a government witness. And that FBI agent, now retired, decided to come on, and she is going to tell us her story. Welcome back, MobVlog.
It wasn't until I was with him for a year, and that was intensive interrogation and discussion, and he had a photographic memory. And that was why he was such a phenomenal gambler, and that was why he was such a phenomenal witness. He remembered everything. So not only do I get a guy that's been associated with the mob for 35 years, and he's really bright, he remembers all of the bosses, all of the associates, what they did, what the illegal things they ran. It was amazing. And so myself and another agent produced 3 huge binders of his information, each binder like this. It was the outline of the mob, and no one ever had given that to us. So I called it the Rosetta Stone of the mob. He was in the Witness Protection Program for 17 years. And during that time, based on the information that he had given, we had disseminated that to other FBI offices and brought him in as an encyclopedia of the mob. And he would testify as to the hierarchy and what businesses they controlled and what this person really, what his involvement was. And he testified in 8 trials in Chicago. He testified in New York. He testified in front of the President's Commission on Organized Crime in Washington, D.C. It was an amazing usage of a witness. It's an exciting story in an era that you would never think that someone could experience all of these things. And there were very few women that were experiencing them, and there were very few women that really actually went out there and did it. And I was very privileged to be able to do that, but I was just the kind of person that I was going to go do it. I really addressed my job with a great deal of energy and determination. And that's what really helped me have an even a richer career. I was a woman, I was in the FBI, I was promoted, I was given awards, and I did it my way.
Elaine, welcome.
Thank you.
I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you sending a copy of your book, which I have to say I read cover to cover. Started it in the morning, finished it in the afternoon, and was completely fascinated the entire time I read your book.
Peter.
How long did it take you to write the book?
I had some backers that wanted me to write it, and they gave me a 6-month window. It was locked down in a bedroom on the 2nd floor of our house. I really have a hard time going in that bedroom now. It was very isolating. I am not an isolated person, so it was not easy.
So you had to sit there and just pound it out and hammer it out and bullet points and outlines.
Yes, it's kind of like the thing that you keep waking up at night thinking about. You wake up thinking about it, you go to sleep thinking about it, and then you wake up thinking, sometime in the middle of the night. And then there were times that I was writing and I became so emotionally involved, I would start crying, and I had to go over the deaths of several people. And it was a kind of a rendering of my heart.
Specifically, are you speaking about Tokyo Joe, about Ken? And I'm known as Adam the Butcher, so I'm terrible with Italian names. So let's go to Japanese now. Is it Ito or Eto?
Eto.
Eto.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
It wasn't about Eto. It was about a good friend of mine that was an agent that died. And generally, the deaths of some of the people that I worked with and friends. So
Now, you started out in Chicago. You had some incidences when you were younger that could have led to you perhaps having a incident where you may have been kidnapped or assaulted in some way, which made you very aware of your surroundings and made you you kind of started training as a law enforcement agent before you knew you were, right?
Yes, yes. Yeah, I don't wish that upon any child, because you'll never walk down the street not aware that you're in danger. Um, but it really did train me for the FBI.
Hmm.
It really helped a lot. And I would sometimes identify people walking, but like identified somebody's wife by their purse, and everybody was like, "What? You looked at her purse?" And I said, "Yes." Or, oh, whether they're fat or skinny, or, I used all sorts of things to try to remember them.
You graduated from high school. You were the homecoming queen. You were the popular one, right? And you graduated top in your class. And then what? Tell us the story of what went from high school, and did you know at that point you wanted to be in law enforcement, and when you actually decided you wanted to be into law enforcement?
No, not at all. I never thought about being in law enforcement. In fact, I didn't really even know about FBI agents. And I sure didn't want to be a Chicago cop because I knew they were crooks. And, not all of them, but they had really a bad reputation. And I was going to be your high school English teacher. I wanted to be an English teacher, and I thought that that would be just a fabulous profession. And I fell into it's in a career that most people dream of, and I didn't dream of it, but it just happened, because my husband, my high school sweetheart, my college sweetheart, was recruited by the FBI, and he thought, they're starting to have women come in the FBI, and I think you'd really be good. Well, I thank him for his honesty and his support. But I had taught in the inner city of Chicago, and I was pretty tough. I went through the riots after Martin Luther King died, so I was kind of accustomed to on the edge kind of environment.
Okay. And how tall are you?
5'6".
Okay, 5'6", and you're not a very large in stature person. You're
No, about 110 pounds.
and at the time, how many FBI agents were female?
They're out of about 8,300 of us.
So not very many.
Not
So that
uh-uh.
definitely you were going into a male dominated field, and in the
Oh,
70s
absolutely.
you're still experiencing sexual discrimination and whatnot before you even knew what it was called, you said.
I didn't even know when it was being done to me.
A little
I
naive.
had a bad feeling. I thought, well, that doesn't sound right.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
that helped me not have a lot of pain. If you don't know that someone's being an asshole to you, it's
very,
your take.
very, very true. Sometimes ignorance is bliss. That's what they say, right? Okay, so you trained in and you qualified into the academy to go to Quantico in Virginia and begin your training, yes?
Yes, yes.
Grueling?
Grueling.
Would you do it again?
Well, knowing what happened afterwards, yes. But while I was in it, it was pretty horrible. I had never been punched. We had to go in a boxing ring, and when you get punched, and I've asked a lot of guys, do you know what it feels like to get punched in the face?
Hmm.
And very few of them do. Um, Shoved, pushed, but not really punched in the face. But we were boxing, and it hurts. It really hurts. And wrestling, I had to do a lot of wrestling, and you know, uh, these were guys in my class, and they were all sweaty, and I wasn't attracted to any of them, but try wrestling with someone who's all sweaty. Okay, and then they blow the whistle, and then the next guy comes into the ring, and you wrestle with him. It was really freaky, tell you the truth.
Sounds freaky.
Yeah,
Yeah, I never got into wrestling. I watched that sport in high school, and I said, I don't,
yeah,
not my thing.
it's intense,
Yeah.
really is.
So you shot quite a bit. You had
Yes,
to qualify, test, break guns down.
yes. The FBI is a maniac about shooting. Most police departments, even in their training after you cut on parole or working the streets, shoots maybe once or twice a year. They go around with this gun, like is part of your presence, and they really aren't totally familiar with it, nor are they totally familiar with shooting and shooting from all sorts of different positions, prone, behind things, under things, lights, dark. I mean, the FBI trained you for that. And when I went out on the street for the first couple of years, I thought to myself, oh, come on, just try it. Just try to
Hmm.
get me because you are going to be so surprised. So it gave me a great deal of confidence, and I'm glad I was trained.
Very, very cool. That's it's all super interesting. Now, you're in the FBI, and what do they have you do as a? And I'm not putting it to be misogynistic, but as a woman, did they throw you out in the field? Did you get thrown under cover, or what did they do?
Um, when you get back, when you get to your assigned city, they put you on a squad. And the first squad I was on for a very short time was we did background investigations for federal appointees. And I remember telling my husband, coming home and telling him, man, they're going to have to pay me a lot more money to do this job. It was boring. It was awful. And there were squads that worked all sorts of different violations. But I'm from Chicago and was fascinated by the mob. And I got I I studied the managers of the mob squads. There were 4 or 5 of them. And I picked one that I thought might be influenced by having a woman asked to be on his squad because at the time there were 0 women working organized crime. And I watched this guy for a couple months, and then I went up to him and asked him out for breakfast. And he was astonished. He was really kind of afraid. He kind of like jumped back, like, oh my God, what is she doing here? But he went. And that was when I approached him about how I really wanted to work the mob. And I would be happy to do anything that helped our investigations of them. Because I had seen my whole life the headlines of body found in trunk or people shot up in the forest preserve or and it was part of growing up. And they controlled all the prostitution and all of the guy places that they had licenses till 4 a.m. I found that really exciting and fun. um, and he brought it back to the squad and they had a vote. Yeah, try that.
They voted.
Yes, they voted whether I could come on the squad.
Wow. Do they
Yes.
still vote? Or
No. Equal, environments, equal opportunity. No, they don't vote.
wow.
Um, and they voted, yeah, I could come on. But really, they wanted me because they had just started a wiretap. And that just is an intensive use of manpower, incredibly boring, but very important. And so they thought, oh, we'll get her and put her on the wiretap. And they did. I sat on a wiretap for 3 months, but it was very educational. Very, there's nothing glamorous about the mob. They swear constantly. They yell at their kids. They push their wives in the kitchen. I mean, they're beasts. They're beasts.
You heard all of this during the wiretaps, listening
Yes,
to.
yes.
Who were you listening to?
Pardon me?
Who were you listening to specifically? Do you recall any of the names or
No,
any I'd recognize? Or
would prefer not to tell you that. Okay.
sure, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
So you learned all about the mob and how they were and how they operated, and you asked to be on the squad. They took a vote. You got on, and how did Ken Eto come about?
So I'm on the squad, and they need to assign me a case, just to make it look good. And so they assigned me the case of Ken Eto, investigating him. And there were 3 pages in the file folder. 3 pages. And the case had been open since 1956. It was like, really, and I was pissed. I was like, first of all, he's not even Italian. And this case has been open since 1956, and there's 3 pages of work. I was really angry. And I boiled for a while, and then I thought, well, I'm going to have to try to work it. And I worked it by introducing myself to Ken Eto and asking him if he would talk to me, if he would have a drink with me. Most guys like begin to pass out when some woman comes up and asks them if they could have a drink with her.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, no. But I gave him my card. And that was 18 months before he was shot in the head. So I was the first FBI agent he had ever met. I had given him my card. I had been polite to him. And he remembered that. And after he was shot, he remembered that he didn't want the police. He didn't want to tell the police who shot him. He I got that agent that gave me the card. And who's been nice to me my whole life are women. And he said, I'll only speak to the FBI. And so the police said, who the F is Elaine Smith in the FBI? And he held out. He said, I'm only going to talk to her. And that was how it went down.
Okay, so you said you met him and gave him your card.
Yes.
Now, how did that meeting happen to take place?
I was surveilling him.
Uh-huh.
Came out of his apartment and let him walk a couple blocks. And then I came up to him and introduced myself and showed him my credentials. And said, I would like to, could we sit down for coffee or a drink? I'd like to talk with you. And he was very polite. No, I don't want to talk with you. But at least he stood there and listened to it.
Frankie.
Interesting. That's interesting. Now, to get to that point with Ken, you had to have a couple of other informants along the way.
Right on the point. So, just coincidentally, Frankie calls the office, FBI office, and wants to talk to somebody about Ken Eto. And the first person that took the call decided that he was the supervisor. He was going to give it to someone on his squad. And my supervisor heard about it and marched into his office and told him, that's our case. That's Elaine Smith's case. And she's going to have this. So it was a tremendous break. And it was miraculous that my boss stood up for me and said, you're not giving that case to somebody else. You're going to give it to Elaine Smith. And that was it.
Mm-hmm.
Got to go out and meet Frankie. And he gave me all of how the gambling operation was working. Because you have to prove a criminal act. And you couldn't arrest Ken Eto just for being a mob, associate.
Frankie, his last name?
No, I'm not going to say it.
Okay, so it wasn't in here. I'm not out of my mind in my notes, right? Because my notes, I just have Frankie with a question mark. And he worked for Micus, right? Or he
Yeah, and
knew
I
Micus.
changed his name too.
Okay. Now, when they pulled up in East Chicago to do the first drop to a guy named Flowers,
Yeah, yeah,
really?
yeah,
I was like, really? Flower? Now, I had an uncle named Flowers who ran some book out of the back of a restaurant back in the day.
Oh,
So
that's
it was
interesting.
my grandmother's brother, but that I don't think his name would have been Flowers. So I think it was the other maiden name. But when I saw that, I went, ooh. So he worked for Micus, and you guys followed.
Yes, and watched him pick up the gambling receipts, watch the, cross state lines, which of course was really important. But when we found out how big the gambling operation was, it already qualified as a federal case. He took about $10,000 a week in these Bolita bets. So he was making book on $40,000 of bets for the outfit each month. So it would have qualified for a federal case anyway without crossing state lines because they assume at that point that it's big enough. Frankie would tell me, because he would go along with this, Micus, he'd ride along. He convinced him that, hey, I'll keep you company. You're going to East Chicago, bring kind of a bad place, blah, blah, blah. He was perfect. He was perfect. And I could not have made the case without him. No.
So this Bolito, can you explain what the Bolito games? I've never heard of these.
Yes, it's played by Puerto Ricans, and it's based on the Puerto Rican lottery with 3 numbers, and the 3 numbers are pulled like on Tuesday night or Monday night, and then there's a payoff like the lottery. So that was what it was, and they were taking a lot of book at the ironworks out in East Chicago and all around. And you could maybe put a number in for like $1. So it was a huge volume.
Huh. It's kind of like the Illinois State Lottery, right?
Yeah,
The daily pick 3.
Interesting. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, but they actually pulled the numbers in Puerto Rico.
Yes.
Okay. So it was their lottery system that they were kind of cutting the government out is what they were doing.
Yes, that's right.
Right. What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Bolito games, you finally got a warrant to arrest, or to at least at the hotel, right?
Yes, that's where they got a hotel room in a western suburb of Chicago, a crappy place, but it wasn't too horrible. And they would sit there and tabulate all of the bets to see how many winners there were. And they went through thousands of these little pieces of paper with the numbers and stuff, because Eto had to pay out. If they guessed the number, Eto had to pay out. And he didn't. It was a really good chance that he wasn't going to have to pay out. And if you bet $1, maybe you're going to win $100. That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew where they would go and tabulate these Bolito records because Frankie told me. He said, I've got Walter figured out that he likes to go to this Holiday Inn, and I'm going to rent it for him every week. And so then it was really a nice thing. I would follow Micus to the Holiday Inn in the room that my informant had rented, and there he sat and tabulated all night.
I guess what I'm trying to get to is why did the mob shoot him? Why did they try and kill him?
Eto knew too much. He had grown up with the bosses. We now have 30 years. And Eto was a gambler. As soon as he was released from internment camp, which is really a twist to this story, He went to Chicago because he was a gambler and he heard that they had a lot of really good games. And he gambled, he played poker. Although he could play almost any game, because I didn't realize until I was debriefing him after about a year that he had kind of a photographic memory. And it was shocking. And we wanted to keep his testimony consistent and pure because he was going to be used at all these different trials, and we didn't want anybody crossing him and giving different answers. And we didn't. Mark, this other guy that I worked with on him, we were like astonished. He could remember this perfectly. We had to look at our notes. So he did very well gambling. And that was, he ran away from home when he was 16. He didn't have much of an education, but he was really smart and he had a really almost total recall memory. And you could make money in gambling, but the mob controls gambling. And so you got to hook in with them. And he knew that and he did that. And so he knew these mobsters and he could go back and talk about all the prostitution houses, or all they paid off, all the cops and these different cops. In fact, the chief of detectives at the time was being paid by the mob. I mean, he knew things that would put these people in jail, which eventually did a few years later for like 63 years. Tried to get a sentence for 63 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, Ken was born in California.
Yes, his parents were immigrants from Japan.
And they around 1920. So he was going through the Great Depression when he was a kid.
Uh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. Went through the Great Depression and
Yeah.
then World War II.
Yeah.
They threw him in an internment camp in Idaho.
hmm
So kind of again, I mean, you're talking from 40 till 45. He's in that internment camp until he was 25 years old almost.
Gambling the whole time.
Gambling the whole time, learning that he had a photographic memory.
Yeah,
Right?
learning that he could gamble and make money.
Yeah. Wow. What a childhood to come out of and to go. I mean, I've come across this in a lot of the different mobsters that have been researched. They come from very poor areas where it's almost like the only way out and to be successful is a life of crime.
Yes, yes. I mean, I learned that when we did the wiretaps, and we learned the kitchen life of a mobster because they're reflecting what they saw it from the kitchen of their childhood, and they actually didn't have a lot of money. Only the top bosses had lots of money. Most of these guys were scraping by, had to shake down everybody they could think of. They shook down the butcher because they wanted discounts on, and they would get pissed off if the butcher kind of fought it. They were really dog eat dog.
What part of Chicago did you grow up in?
North side, northwest side.
Northwest side. Okay. Northwest side, and you were fascinated with the mob as a kid?
Yeah. Yeah, my parents got the Chicago Tribune every day, and once a month there was a dead body, or
Right.
it was a very influential activity on all the citizens of Chicago.
So if you could describe what, because you listen to it, and I'm not asking you for names, but I know you listen to a lot of these guys talk and how they interacted with one another and how they interacted with their family. Did they seem as though there were two sides to them?
No.
No?
No, they were mean to everybody. I mean, they didn't fool around with the bosses. They didn't mouth off with them. But there are other mobster people. Yeah, they were really kind of a tough crowd to hang out with because everybody was you know, trying to make their bones themselves. And their competition was another mobster. So they spoke very crudely and didn't treat their families very well. Um, you know, kind of like the father that would slap you across the kitchen. Kind of like the father that would yell and yell all day, or if you did the one thing wrong. Um, and it was all they were always on edge because they had to get more money, and they had to do maybe things they thought were a little scary to get that money,
Mm-hmm.
killing someone and being found out about it. Um, so those households were very deprived, very, very deprived. And they all had affairs with the whores and
So there's a lot of that going on, but I imagine in that life, that's what it is, right? I mean, that's what it was. I don't know. Do you think still is?
no, the mob doesn't hold the position it did at one. I mean, I'm talking about Chicago. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know what happened, and this is just conjecture. The Russians came in, and they were another level of cruelty and willing to do anything for money. So
When was that? What
that
decade?
like in the early 80s, early mid 80s, they started to really come in and start opening up gambling games. And you know, they weren't afraid of these guys. I mean, they were hardcore. They grew up in Russia. They had lived in Russia. And from what I hear or heard, it was a pretty brutal place. So
Wow.
they just, you know what? And the mobsters' kids went to school. They did have enough money to go to school, and they saw how disgusting their father, how tough their father's lives were, and decided, oh, I think I'll be a lawyer. I'll be the lawyer for the mob.
Uh-huh.
There are few of those, or I'll be the accountant, or
Right.
I'll be in the union.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll be in charge of it.
Yes, I'm even president.
There you go. Now, who was Ken Eto's boss?
Vince Solano, president of local labor's union, blah blah blah. Yeah,
Okay. And what can you tell me about Vince? I haven't heard much about him, what he was like,
he was a
or what he.
sleeper. He was very, very not. Edo didn't think much of him. He was a sleeper, and but he was the boss of the North Side, which took in a lot of area and a lot of vices.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think he had the in to the union, and that is what gave him a reputation with the mob, because they were seeing that the union was just like, whoa, this is like an Easter basket,
Mm-hmm.
corrupting the unions.
Now, Solano is in that Last Supper photo with all the other
Yeah,
bosses.
yes, yes, yes. So he's holding his own with, some pretty heavy people.
Yeah, a lot of heavyweights were there. It
Yeah,
was all the street bosses. And
yeah.
um, do you know anything about that picture? About like what was happening? Was that really Joe Lombardo's ceremony there, being
No,
made a street
no, I
boss?
think so.
No.
It was really something. They made a mistake. I don't know, because it was really a stupid thing to sit down and have what they termed as like just a Christmas luncheon. And they passed out envelopes, the Christmas bonus.
Okay.
Not that they were in an envelope, but they passed out wads of money based on what they had brought in the rest of the year.
So that's what was happening in that photo.
Yes, yes, that's the
Oh.
conjecture. We've never had anybody that was sitting at that table tell us that, though. That was the.
Okay. Interesting. I've never
Mhm.
heard that. I've never heard that. I always wondered who took the photo though.
Oh, a waiter or something.
Had to have been
Because
Sid,
it was
right?
a mob-owned restaurant.
Yeah. Okay. back to Ken and Vince Solano and the North Side gang. You said they were involved with a lot of different vices, a lot of things on the North Side.
The big nightclub area in Chicago was on the North Side, off of Michigan Avenue, and it was there were go-go clubs, and there was gambling in the back of them. There were little storefronts where they had a game going all the time, and these are high-stake games. Huge prostitution because of all the different bars, and all the bars had to pay off, and the mob had, paid off maybe the commander of that whole area. So it was a very lucrative area because it had prostitution, it had illegal gambling, it had bars that drew hundreds of people, dancing, great pickup scene. It was the place.
It was Rush Street right there
Yeah.
too. That was with Faces and
Yeah.
Mr. Whatever. I don't remember the names of them because I wasn't there. I've only looked at the photos during my research. But yeah, that was a happening place. Yeah, that's so that was all run by the North Side.
Yes, and then they had the unions, where they had Vince with the labor unions, and they had all those different places paying them street tax. Besides all the linen and the glassware and the booze. I mean, they hit every stream of money that you could imagine that had to be made in that little town.
So, Elaine, what about the shooting? How exactly did that go down? Because it was Jasper, Campesi, and who's the other?
Gattuso.
Gattuso, right?
Who was the deputy?
Yeah. Okay, John Gattuso, to begin was a deputy in the Cook County Sheriff's Office.
I did not know that. What?
Yes, but it was kind of honorary. He didn't report to work.
Okay.
He had a badge and gun, but that was, there were like ghost payrolls, and the Cook County Sheriff's Office had a ghost payroll of mobsters.
Okay.
That carried badges, and yeah.
God, did they do hits for the mob?
No, well, Gattuso did, but not under the guise of, knock, knock, this is the sheriff. And then the blast. So Eto gets indicted. Now, Vince Solano, I've already alluded to his not being so bright and being very distrustful of everybody. And he was very distrustful of Eto because I think he was a racist, but I think he was a racist. And Eto wasn't a made member. But he had known him for like 30 years. But anyway, so he whistles Eto to the pancake house. These people they go to pancake houses. They have meetings at pancake houses or coffee shops or,
Mm-hmm.
And so he is so inked up that he says, let's go for a walk. And he asks Eto, what's under your coat? And he wants Eto to open his coat because he thought Eto might be wearing a wire. Eto doesn't have anything. Eto had no idea that he would ever cooperate. In fact, he said he never would have cooperated. He said, 18 months, I'll get 18 months for federal gambling. I can do that standing on my head, were his words. But Vince couldn't have. Vince asked him what happened with this, and he told him that an informant had infiltrated. So he has a talk with Eto, but Eto in the back of his mind thinks, boy, he doesn't trust me. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I gotta go through this. Nobody can run away. So he goes through it, and I'm getting ready with the prosecutors to bring him in trial, and he pleads Um, no, sort of nolo contendere. I'm going to plead guilty and take whatever time you want. And Solano is like kind of pissed. What? Are you rolling over? And Eto says it's going to cost me $50,000 to get an attorney. I'm just going to roll over and see what little time they give me, and I'll be back in the street. That was his theory. Vince didn't buy it, and so the Vince called the hit. And John Gattuso had never been on a hit. He was making his bones. Jasper Campesi had. Now, Jasper Campesi came from Kansas City years before. You know that Vegas really was started by the Kansas City mob.
Oh, do tell.
Yes, they did a lot of funding for Vegas, and a lot of money that was coming out of Vegas to Chicago came through the Kansas City connections. Now, it's been a lot of years, and I was in Kansas City, and Joe was in Kansas City that was where the bosses from Chicago were all tried.
Mm-hmm.
And so Kansas City was very influential, big connection to the Chicago mob. And so they get Jasper Campesi because he's a trusted guy. He's made. He'll go along with this other guy, and they'll just shoot him. And they planned to shoot him in the school car. But it's under the guise that the boss is going to take Eto out for dinner. Vince Solano has never taken him out for dinner, has never done anything. It doesn't even buy him a cup of coffee when they meet at the coffee shop. So he says, I knew I was going to get hit. And I asked him, I can't tell you how many times I asked him, why did you go to that dinner? He took a bath? He took a bath. He took a bath. He put on all clean clothes, the best suit he had, best shirt and tie. And he went to the meeting. And before he met up with Jasper Campesi and John Gattuso, he sat in his car, and it was February something and colder than hell in Chicago. And he thought, I'll have to run for the rest of my life. I'm just going to go and take my chances. I'm going to take my odds. He's a gambler. He's got to take his odds. Mm-hmm. So he goes, and he says he knows as soon as the guys get in the car, one in the front seat, one in the back seat, right behind him. They tell him to go to this restaurant. He says he's never even heard of this restaurant. He's supposed to have dinner with Vince. And they tell him that go down this alley, the restaurant, we're going to go through the back door. And he goes down the alley, and Gattuso pulls out his gun and puts it right on his head, right on the back of his head, and shoots 3 times. And then they boogie out of that car. They run for their lives out of that car. And Eto's in the alley behind the steering wheel of his car. Yeah. But before they get out, he wants them to think that they did the job. And he pretends that he's dying. He starts shaking all over, and, head wounds are really bloody, and blood's flying everywhere, and he falls to the front seat and waits till they exit the car, and he can hear their feet on the sidewalk running away. He slowly gets up and then goes, there's a pharmacist on the block, and goes there. And says, can you please call an ambulance? I've just been shot. And when we have the recording, the pharmacist doesn't believe him. He says, what? Yeah, see, I've been just shot in the head, and he's bleeding profusely, but he has walked in. And the pharmacist calls the police, and the police about 911 don't even believe him. Yes. Oh, you mean the guy was shot and he walked into your drugstore? Yes, this is how it is. Yeah, and then 911 puts him on hold and tells the guy that's sitting next to him, I just got a call. You're not going to believe this. Oh, God, good thing Edo survived all of this. And then the ambulance does come, and then they take him to the hospital. And but he knows that he has to talk to somebody else other than the Chicago police, and that's when he asks for me.
Wow. So
Yeah,
what are the chances of the
yeah,
bullets hitting his head just at that angle? Not
yes,
once, twice, but 3 times.
yes, you got it. But the angle, it's the angle.
Huh?
Yes, and it was a 22. Okay,
Hmm.
and the ammo was kind of old. They said,
Okay.
FBI. I sent it back to our lab.
All speculation.
Hmm.
Yeah, but that's all speculation. But it was really, I'm telling you, got it. It was the
It's the
angle.
angle, right? So if they'd have just an inch to the right,
Yes.
right, and
Well,
it wouldn't, because it was his left side of his head. Am I
yeah.
right? Yeah, or correct? Am I correct?
Mm,
It's the left side. Am I right? I'm correct.
yeah,
It's there.
right side, because he
Right
just
side.
sat in the back seat,
Okay.
and that was
Okay.
so he was in the back
Right,
seat.
right-handed.
Right hand shooter.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So he shoots, and they just graze, go in and out.
Well,
How?
subdermally is what the doctor said, and you could see the path that the bullet made in his skin.
Wow. How incredible.
Yeah.
That's just incredible. That I so he survived. He's in the hospital. He wanted to see you, and there's where your relationship began, as far as debriefing him and then getting him into the right hands to get him into witness protection and whatnot.
Yes. There's only one hiccup when he said he was only going to talk to me. I was in Aspen or Vale skiing, and the agents are at the office say, "Oh, what the? She's out skiing. I mean, really?" And they had to. They knew though that I was as serious as a heart attack. I would, and so they called me, and I said to my boss, "I'll be on the first plane tomorrow from Denver." And he said, "No, no, no." And I'm thinking, "Oh man, he's gonna screw me here." And he says, "No, when you get back, this case will be yours, but you won't have a vacation for a long time." Now, I can't just say, "Well, screw you. I'm coming back anyway." You just didn't do that. Um, so I had to trust him. I had to take his word for it. That when I got back, he wouldn't have given the case to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
But he did. So I didn't come back into the scene in Chicago until like 8 or 9 days later. Um, but everybody told Edo where I was and what was going on. And it was like Edo was waiting for me. I dressed up to go to the hospital to see him. Um, and it was like we were old friends to begin with, because he had been waiting. I was going to be his savior from the Chicago police and all these guys that were all around. And he had a history of the only people that treated him kindly and truthfully were women. And so I had a leg up on anybody. All these guys are around him, and really he wanted his mama. He wanted a lover. He wanted somebody that would be soft with him and understand. So that was
And
it.
you were it. Yeah. Wow.
And then
Wow.
I did tell him, "Don't ever tell anybody else. Make sure you don't ever talk to anybody unless I'm in the room." And for years he did that.
Uh-huh.
And everybody wanted to talk to him, and he'd say, "Well, I'll talk to you, but I have to have Elaine Smith here."
Mm-hmm. How many years did you know him from the point that he rolled, which was what year, by the way?
1983.
80.
1983.
So 83 he rolled, and then you knew him until he died, correct?
Yes, yes. I think he died in 97.
Okay. So So that was a good like 15 years almost, right?
Tom, my husband's correcting me. He died in 2004.
4. Okay,
Wow.
so 2 decades. You had 2 decades then you knew him.
Yeah.
A lot of times, Frank Cullotta, who I worked with on this channel to begin with when we first started it, he had quite the story as far as his person in the FBI, Dennis Arnoldy. They really became, you know, friends. Like, Dennis's kids would call him Uncle Frank, and they had a really kind of a friendship that happened. And it seems like criminals who end up rolling and becoming witnesses, have a connection with their person, right?
Yeah.
Did you find that you had that with Ken?
Yeah. I had that. First of all, I was his guardian angel because he knew that he could ask for me, and and the FBI would definitely value him. Second of all, he had a natural propensity for women. He thought they were gentler, and it wasn't any, I'm tougher than you and anything like that. And I became his protector from the U.S. Marshal Service. I protected him from anybody debriefing him rudely. Um, and I put him up in the finest hotels. I took him out to the best places for dinner. We went all over the United States, eating out and staying at the nicest places that we could. And he just became totally enamored. And it was for years. And I had never stabbed him in the back. So we had.
Did you talk to him often at all, or?
Yes.
No.
Towards the end, not so frequently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it came a time, maybe about 10 years after he's in the witness protection program, that one of the guys that runs the marshals, that runs the protection program, I had become friends with them. And he said, when I saw Joe recently, and he said he looked a little down on his luck. No, like, oh my God. So, because I had gotten him monthly payments of thousands of dollars, but maybe 4,000, 3,000. And I thought, we can't let this happen to this man after what he's done. He's testified the president's commission on organized crime. We just can't leave him out there. Because if you're a mobster, what skills do you have? You're not an electrician, you're not a plumber. Maybe you could be a car salesman, but that's pretty rough. I mean, they don't go to, training school or go to college. So I decided the FBI needed to give him another lump sum payment, and I wrote him up for another, was it like $10,000 or $20,000? And I had the U.S. Marshals deliver it to him, and he needed to be paid in cash. And I said, you got to pay him in cash, and you got to bring it to him and tell him, Elaine and the FBI says thank you, and then that sealed it. He wouldn't talk to anybody else. He was like wildly grateful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you went to bat for him and got him on his comfortable again.
Yes.
Yeah, that's nice. So interesting that you did all that with him. He testified though in court, yes, and many times all around the country.
Yes.
Can you tell me what his testimonies did? Who possibly that he testified against, different things that he knew that because of him were accomplished.
He testified in Kansas City, and that we took down 5 of the biggest bosses in the Chicago mob. He testified in Chicago. He testified in Washington, D.C., President's Commission on Organized Crime. He testified about the Detroit mob. He testified about Vegas. I can, after all these years, I can't recall it, but he was, you know, one of the best witnesses the Department of Justice and the FBI ever had against organized crime.
He came in sentencing.
Yeah, they also used him for the sentencing of many of these mobsters because they wanted to prove that it was a racketeering and corrupt organization. They had to prove RICO. And Eto came in and said this was an organization. There were bosses, there was a high level and low level, and the money flowed up, and it came, you know, and so that was very helpful.
So he did a lot, in other words, for the government.
Oh God, yeah. So I wanted to give him an award, like Citizen of the Year or something like that. And the FBI director turned it down. So we're not giving any mobster the FBI award of the Citizen of the Year. So,
oh, gosh.
Forget.
I couldn't imagine. Can't imagine. So, Elaine, thank you very, very much for coming on MobVlog and doing this interview. You were you have a fascinating story, fascinating life, and I appreciate you coming on the channel and doing this.
Yes, thank you. My husband's sitting next to me going, "Oh, where am I in this?"
Yeah, Tom's done a great job. A little coaching, a little keeping things on track, you know. So
yeah, he recruited me. He kept things on track. He never once challenged my travels or my hours or what a wonderful person he is for me and husband.
Being that the two of you worked both for the FBI, did you ever work together?
Yes, but not very often.
Okay. So I ask because I have a thing about working with somebody that I have to see at home, you know, at work. So just.
Tell me about the first fugitive.
Oh,
you were at the back door in the alley.
Yeah. And my knees knocking.
Friday night,
yeah. Tom was on the bank robbery squad and kidnapping. So he always got called out constantly, and this was a Friday night, and I was in the office late with him. We were going to go home and have dinner, but they they got information that this fugitive for killing 3 people in a bank robbery was at this house, and they said, "Tom, come on, we all got to all go out there." And then they looked at me, and I was sitting over in my squad. "Hey, Elaine, can you go on an arrest?" Well, of course you don't say no. You go. So I went, and it was like in one of the worst neighborhoods of Chicago. And you know how everybody gets out of their car, and then you take the front door. And of course, I never was going to give the front door. They weren't going to give me the front door. Smith, you go to the back door. And I'm thinking, what? I got to go down this alley in the back door? And I was at the back door myself. And I'm telling you, my knees were knocking. I have never been so afraid in my life. 10 o'clock on a Friday night, arresting a bank robber that killed 3 people. And I'm on the back door of this shitbag house. And my knees were knocking. I was so afraid my knees were knocking. And I can't tell you, nobody ever admits whether their knees were knocking ever. But, and I never believed it, but it was the scariest thing that I have ever done. But I would have, I was glad nobody came down those back stairs because I might have shot them and they would have been. Yeah. So that was thanks to my husband. He was so nice to me.
Well, that's pretty cool. Not everybody gets to work with their significant other, you know.
Maybe
So
that's why we didn't work together. Maybe I was a little reluctant after that experience.
there you go.
Yeah.
Well, Elaine, thank you once again. The book, A Gun in My Gucci. This is a cool name for your book. Gun in My Gucci. You guys can click the link below in the description. Look in the description. You can click and buy Elaine's book. You can download it on Kindle or you can get a soft cover. If you want to get an autographed book, there will be a way to do that soon. Maybe Elaine, we could have you on again in the future and do another interview. Maybe even do a live one where we can let the audience interact a little bit and ask some questions.
That would be fun.
All right. Awesome.
Yeah. Okay,
awesome.
You very much.
Hey, thank you, Elaine. You have a great day.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.